and this is the transcript reading of the May 18th hearing that took place with no cameras and behind closed doors. Whoops. Um, Actually, no, that's not true. I mean, it was in the courtroom, but behind closed doors, the rest of the public didn't get to see. So, we're going to be reading through the transcript because some individuals pulled their money together and got it. And those individuals, I don't know all of them, but I do want to give a huge shout out to Bob Mata from the Defense Diaries because he's one of the individuals that got it, shared it, and he is allowing anybody else to share it as well because it's something that the public needs to be aware of and it shouldn't be hidden, kind of like how Gull is trying to hide a lot of this stuff, and Nick McClelland. I do want to mention I apologize for being in the dark. I have a headache slash feel like migraine's coming on, so the light is bothering me. So I've got it dim. So I hope that's okay with you. All right, before we dive in, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Comment below as we're reading through what things come to your mind as we read through this script or transcript, and let me know what you guys are thinking about it. So let's begin. This is the proceedings on March 18th. This is for the motion to dismiss. So originally, Baldwin and Rosie, the attorneys for Richard Allen, the accused in the Delphi unalivings of Abby and Libby, they so this was the hearing to dismiss those charges of on Richard Allen. So the charges that my dog was barking at me. So the charges that are pending regarding Richard Allen, including the kidnapping and the unaliving, because his charges got upgraded. So this was to dismiss the charges, and we're going to read it. And unfortunately, I will not be doing voices, so you'll just have to read along with me. And I will make this in a link available under my. Why is my computer being so slow? This is really annoying. I might have to stop and redo something because I don't know if it continues. I'll restart. I don't want to restart, but okay. So the appearances include Nicholas C. McClelland, Stacy Diener, and James Luttrell, all for the state of Indiana. For the defendant, we've got Bradley A. Rosie and Andrew J. Baldwin. We also have the Honorable Francis C. Gull as our presiding judge, and then Jody L. Williams was the court reporter who thankfully Bob Mata and his team or team of individuals. I don't know if it was multiple YouTube creators or what. I missed that part and what he said, but I know he played a part in contributing to the funds to purchase these transcripts. So they reached out to the transcriber and to the court reporter, and she asked her how much it was to transcribe them, and that's how they got them. It's really not that difficult. It's just going through the process and paying. Okay, why is my computer being so slow? All right, so the proceedings, the court. Before we get started, and Ms. Diener, sorry, I understand you'll be handling the state's argument on the motion to dismiss. Yes, I will. The court responds, okay, I just wanted to advise counsel that when I granted the defense request for speedy trial and set the trial as scheduled, I caused the jury office to begin the process to get the jury questionnaires out to everybody, and on March 14th, the questionnaire packets went out in the mail. That was the questionnaire that you all looked at before and submitted with the letter from the court dated March 11th of 2024 to accompany the questionnaire, and I established the same timeline that we had before. So as soon as the questionnaires come back, I will provide those to counsel on a flash drive, and then I know before we part company here after the motion to dismiss, there are several motions filed by both sides that we'll need to address before we go on or go off the record. So contempt, the contemptuous conduct should be, my heating pad up too high, it's hot. The contemptuous conduct motions and things of that nature should be addressed. Any other pending motions that they have are probably going to be addressed here. So, let me take a sip. Everybody hydrate. All right, so Attorney Bradley Rosie starts off, "May I?" The court says yes. Mr. Rosie continues, "Judge, with regard to the questionnaires, did the court include the proposals from both sides or yes? Either side. I just didn't understand exactly. Yes, you did. Whatever questionnaire you all approved and submitted back to the court is the questionnaire." Okay, that went out. All right, very good. Thank you. The court continues, "I think the only thing that I didn't have from counsel was a list of witnesses, but if you could provide that on the first day of jury voir dire, we can play that downstairs for them. All right. Mr. Baldwin, you may proceed on your motion to dismiss for destroying exculpatory evidence." Attorney Andrew Baldwin says, "Thank you. We'd call Todd Click, who is then sworn in. Very briefly, I just want to mention Todd Click is one of the 3 officers that were investigating the Odinist ties. They were going to the Unified Command, and they weren't getting anywhere with what they were telling them about these Odinist ties and what they thought or who they suspected and whatnot. So they continued investigating on their own because, that's the good cop in them. They want to find the truth and the right answer. So Todd Click is a good one. Another one was Ferenczi, who was... his life was ended I think it was in front of his office building. I would like to do a little more of a deep dive on Ferenczi and what was going on with that, because it almost seems like mysterious as to his, the way that he was assassinated, basically. So, anyways, I don't know what that was in relation to. I'm just saying his life was ended, and he was one of the officers that was going down this road. So I don't know. Anyways, direct examination of Todd Click. Questions by Mr. Baldwin. All right, Q. "State your name for the record." "My name is Todd Click." "Spell your name, if you would." Click. First name is Todd, Todd. "What do you do for a living?" "I am currently a parole agent with the state of Indiana." "What did you do prior to that?" "I was a police officer with the Rushville Police Department." "How long did you do that?" "A little more than 20 years, from February 6th of 2001, and then I retired December 31st of 2021. Wow, he's like even got the dates all in his head. Question. To get to the heart of this, have you worked on the DELPHI case? Yes, I have. Can you tell the judge what kind of work you did on the case? I provided investigative assistance to 2 other detectives, Detective Greg Ferenczi, who was a Terre Haute police officer and he was also an FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force member, and Detective Kevin Murphy, who was Indiana State Police detective who was also an FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force member. All right, and what kind of things were you doing in terms of investigative support? Conducting interviews and trying to gather evidence. Over the course of how long did you do that? Roughly 3 years. I began providing assistance approximately June of 2018 and ceased when Detective Ferenczi was shot and life ended in the line of duty July 7th of 2021. All right, can you give a very general understanding, a little bit more detail than you did, but still general, of what kind of things you did? Well, in June of 2018, Detective Ferenczi and Detective Murphy, that's the third officer, Murphy, Click, and Ferenczi are all the officers that continued to look down this road. So in June of 2018, Detective Ferenczi and Detective Murphy came to Rushville to conduct an interview with a gentleman by the name of Elvis Fields. He's one of the ones that are mentioned in the Frank's memorandum, along with other people that we'll be talking about soon. All right, so Elvis Fields, they asked to use our interview room at the Rushville Police Department. They asked me if I would be willing to operate the equipment for them. They asked me if I was familiar with Elvis Fields, to which I was. They asked if I would kind of watch the interview and kind of give my opinion on what kind of the hometown opinion of. Yeah, yes. Okay, keep going. Okay, so after that, Detective Murphy and Detective Ferenczi told me that they were looking at a couple of individuals from the Delphi area. Who were they? They were Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall. Ding, ding, ding. We've got two other individuals that are in the Franks memorandum. Okay, keep going. They asked me if I could help maybe try and find a tie between Elvis Fields and Mr. Holder and Mr. Westfall. Okay, so that was one of your kind of things that you did in the course of this investigation? That is correct. Were you able to find any ties between Elvis Fields and Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall? Yes, I was. What ties did you find? While reviewing some photographs on Brad Holder's Facebook page, I located a photograph with the approximately 5 individuals. They were all wearing Vinlander t-shirts. For those who don't know, what is a Vinlander? Vinlander is a group that practices Norse and paganism religion, kind of along the Viking culture. Okay, keep going. So in the photos, I identified Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall, and there was a gentleman standing in between the two of them that I immediately recognized to be Johnny Messer. So there you go. Okay, how do you know Johnny Messer? Johnny Messer is from Rushville. He'd been arrested numerous times from the Rushville Police Department. Testing. Okay. I don't know why. All of a sudden my mic just stops working sometimes. Like it says the USB not detected and I didn't even touch it. But anyways, sorry. All right, so let me back up a little bit. All right, question. Okay, so what else, if anything, did you do following the recognition that Johnny Messer from Rushville was hanging out with these two guys from Delphi named Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall? Okay, so I knew from previous incidents that Johnny Messer's uncle, Billy Messer, used to live with Elvis Fields. Okay, so that's another connection? That's correct. Keep going. So I contacted Detective Ferenczi and Detective Murphy and told them specifically to look at the photo and that the individual standing in between Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall was Johnny Messer, who was an individual from Rushville. Okay, was there any other, what did you do after that? Okay, so after that, I know that Detective Ferenczi and Detective Murphy came down to Rushville and we had concluded an interview with Johnny Messer. Okay, and then what happened? After conducting that interview, we also conducted an interview with Taylor Hornaday, who is the ex-girlfriend of Johnny Messer's. And did she provide any information that was useful in the investigation? Yes, she did. Okay, keep going. What's next? She was able to provide photographs of Johnny Messer, Patrick Westfall, Brad Holder, several other individuals, that the photographs were taken during club meetings or outings and that the Vinlander group conducted. Okay, what did you do then? We conducted several other interviews. I had specifically asked Johnny if he had tried to recruit anyone else from the Rushville area to be a part of this Vinlander group. He denied that he did. Ms. Diener chimes in. Judge, I'm going to object to him reporting on what Johnny Messer may have told him. Sustained. Johnny Messer is not here to testify. All right. She sustained it. All right, so question from Baldwin. After your interview with Johnny Messer, what then did you do? I conducted several interviews of people that I knew were connected to Johnny Messer, and those individuals told me that Johnny had tried to recruit them into the Vinlander group. Okay, so after you learn that Johnny Messer is recruiting people, then what do you do? We had also, during our interview with Taylor Hornaday, she had given us a cell phone of hers. Well, she had indicated that there was a cell phone of hers that contained recordings of a kidnapping that Johnny was involved in. So we obtained a search warrant to go into that cell phone and conduct a forensic exam to retrieve those recordings. Okay, was that fruitful? There were recordings of Johnny Messer and another individual kidnapping an individual at gunpoint in the Indianapolis area. What did you do then? At that point, we tried to identify who the victim of that kidnapping was, but we were unsuccessful. Okay, keep going. What was kind of the next big thing that you did on this case? All right, we conducted some other interviews. We had spoken with Joyce Moffett, who is Elvis Field's sister. During that interview, she confirmed that she had heard Elvis make comments about things associated with the crime scene, the the unaliving scene of Abby Williams and Liberty German. Okay, and what did you do with that information, or what did you do next? Let me repeat that. Okay, what did you do with that information, or what did you do next? The information was given, of course, myself, Detective Murphy, and Detective Ferenczi were aware of that information, and I was told by Detective Ferenczi and Detective Murphy that they were going to try to contact Unified Command to try and obtain a search warrant for the residence of Elvis Fields. Okay, what happened with that? We never heard anything. Unified Command never called and said, yep, tell us what information and we'll try to get that. And remember, Unified Command is made up of some of the lead law enforcement, and they're the ones that decided to put the kibosh on the whole Odinist thing, and basically it seems like they're corrupt. So Unified Command never called and said anything to them about this search warrant, to try to obtain a search warrant for Elvis Fields. All right, so Unified Command never called and said, yep, tell us what information and we'll try to get that. Yeah, Detective Murphy, and Detective Ferenczi were unable to give me an answer as to whether or not we were authorized to get a search warrant. So Joyce Moffett, Elvis's sister, says basically he's somehow involved in the crime and you weren't able to secure a search warrant of any type. That is correct. Okay, what happened next? This is fascinating, guys. I'm like so enthralled. This is great. Okay, what happened next? We conducted several other interviews throughout that time frame. Okay, was there any other connection between Elvis Fields and Brad Holder that you know of? We were able to connect Elvis Fields to a gentleman by the name of Josh Chrisman. Josh Chrisman was originally part of a group called the American Guard. There was a Make America Great Again rally that was held in Indianapolis approximately 2016, I believe, where the American Guard and Vinlanders were together. And after that rally, they had a house party at a gentleman's house by the name of Mickey McGilly. McGinley? Mickey McGinley? McGinley, yes, thank you. Mr. McGinley was also a Vinlander. He was also friends with a gentleman by the name of Brian James, who was the head of the American Guard. Okay, so we were able to connect Josh Chrisman. We knew that he was a semi-truck driver that conducted deliveries for companies called Flynn Livestock that would transport hogs to different facilities. I know that Weishman Pig Farm in Delphi and then the Tyson plant in Logansport that they would make deliveries to. Elvis Fields kind of worked under the table at Flynn Livestock, and he would get paid by the drivers to load and unload the semis, and he would periodically ride with the drivers to make the deliveries. So Johnny Messer knew, what's this guy's name again? The new guy that you were just talking about? Josh Chrisman. Josh Chrisman. And Josh Chrisman knew Elvis Fields? Yes, that is correct. Okay, so that's another connection. Were there any other connections to Brad Holder between Elvis Fields and Brad Holder? Between Josh Chrisman and Johnny Messer, I don't recall any others. Okay, do you recall if there were any Facebook photos that you had looked at where Brad Holder was following Elvis Fields or vice versa? There were some pictures on Elvis Fields' Facebook page and Brad Holder's Facebook page that were very similar in nature. What do you mean by that? There was pictures of sticks and were placed in different arrangements. I know that there was a picture of a folding pocket knife that they each had. They each had similar pictures of trees. It was just the similarities were very odd. Okay, so that could be another connection between Brad Holder and Elvis Fields. We believe so, yes. Did Elvis Fields ever admit to anybody else or say anything else that was suspicious or would show that he might have been involved in these unalivings? Ms. Steiner steps in and says, "Judge, I'm going to object. Their motion is about a missing audio recording of a Brad Holder interview, and I'm not sure what the connection with Elvis Fields or how this is helpful to us with regard to their motion." The court says, "How is this relevant to your motion?" Mr. Baldwin says, "Judge, Mr. McLeland, in his response to our motion, said that two things. Number one, that the missing document, the missing video, is not either exculpatory or materially useful to the defense. What I am doing right now is laying down the foundation that at the end of the road you will see, yeah, it actually would be materially useful to the defense based upon his investigation, number one. Number two, you will be finding in the moment that, well, Mr. McLeland argued bad faith, you have to prove bad faith. Well, that's difficult to do, and part of what is happening here is you're going to learn that that the law enforcement working on this case operated in bad faith in that they refused to investigate. They tried to, in conjunction with other evidence that I will be talking about." The court says, "Okay, so we're going to get to this evidence then." Yes. "Is that what you're telling me?" Yes. "Then let's get to the evidence." Yes. "Shall we?" "I mean, it may not be through this witness. It may be through others." "Well, let's get to it then, sir." What a bitch. All right. Mr. Baldwin says, "Okay, did Elvis Fields make any admissions that you know of about being involved in this crime?" Objection. Ms. Steiner says, "I would ask that those be admissions made to him." I would ask that those be admissions made to him. Me too. Okay, sustained. I don't know. Whatever, they sustained it. Mr. Baldwin says, "Judge, hearsay. There's a hearsay exception against interest, and that's if somebody says that I'm involved in a crime, and that would be against their interest. The court says to whom? Baldwin says it'd be against their own interest. I ended somebody. That's not hearsay. That's an exception to the hearsay. The court says the objection was that it wasn't to this gentleman here. Oh, that's what I sustained. All right. So Baldwin continues on. Did Elvis did you ever hear Elvis Fields say anything where he was involved in this crime as part of your investigation? Elvis did not say anything to me directly, no. Did he say anything to Kevin Murphy? There was, back in February of 2018, I believe Jerry Holman and Kevin Murphy. So Holman is one of the Unified Command leaders, and yeah, and Liggett, Sheriff Liggett is as well, and there's others, but those two are some big ones that are on the Unified Command that are keeping the information about the Odinist theory under wraps. All right, so there were allegedly, according to these documents. So did he say anything to Kevin Murphy? All right, so it was Jerry Holman and Kevin Murphy interviewed Elvis Fields at the Rushville Police Department, and when Detective Murphy took Elvis back to his trailer, Elvis approached Detective Murphy and said, "Hey, if my spit is found on one of the girls and I've got a reason for why it's there, I'll be okay, correct?" Question. Okay, after that type of information, do you know if that was relayed? Was that part of what information, if you know, was relayed to the Unified Command here to try to see if they'd be willing to get a search warrant for Elvis Field's house? Yes, that was, if I recall, that was part of there were some statements that Elvis had made to his sister that initially prompted the investigation into Elvis Fields. Okay, and was that Joyce Moffett or somebody else? That was a different sister. Okay, what did that part of your investigation reveal? Elvis had made some statements to his sister, Mary Abrams. I don't recall exactly all of the words that he used, but he had told Mary that he was going to go away for a while. He had done something bad to some girls. He was on a high bridge, and they had placed sticks in one of the girls' hair to represent antlers. That he was in a gang, and that he had a brother now. He had a what now? Ms. Steiner interjects and says, "Judge, I'd like to renew the objection. It's not bringing us back to Brad Holder." The court says, "We're kind of wandering far off field here. You said you'd get to the evidence. Let's get there." Question. Okay, after Richard, how much stuff was out there, in your opinion, that would cause a good investigator to think Elvis Fields and Brad Holder were somehow connected to these unalivings? It was the belief of Detective Murphy, Detective Ferenzi, and I that there was a strong likelihood, and there was, that Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Elvis Fields had a strong involvement in the unalivings of the girls. Okay, so how did the investigation on your end wind down? My investigation came to an end when Detective Ferenzi was shot and his life ended in the line of duty. And then what happened after that? What did you do then, if anything, on the Delphi case? I did absolutely. Ms. Steiner interjects, "Judge, may I object again and be more specific in my objection? We're talking about a recording of Brad Holder on February 17th of 2017. All of this is years later, and they have to show how we would know that the evidence is exculpatory in 2017 when the recording goes missing in order to meet the threshold for materially exculpatory. We're not getting there, and it doesn't seem to be going that direction, and it's irrelevant to what was known in 2017 when the recording was missing." Mr. Baldwin replies, Again, Judge, Mr. McLeland responded to my motion citing case law that says number one, you have to show that it, as Ms. Diener just said, that it's either exculpatory or the other word that's materially useful to the defense. This is all foundational for what now I'm about to get into, which is what happened after he was done. What was done or what wasn't done. Bad faith, very difficult to prove, and that's what we're going to be venturing into that territory. But also, it's going to show that what could have been or what would have been on those missing videos would have been certainly, sorry, my dog keeps pacing, certainly useful to the defense, materially useful and or exculpatory, and that's for the court to decide. The court says, I'd have to sustain the objection. Question, did you have a chance? Well, next, what did you do then? What was the next time you did anything, or what was the next thing you, when was the next time you did anything on the Delphi case? I'm thinking when. All right, so I did nothing further after Detective Ferenczi was shot and his life ended. After Richard Allen was arrested, what, if anything, did you do? I eventually contacted a friend of mine who was a former prosecutor and was a criminal defense attorney. Why did you do that? After Richard Allen was arrested, I was initially kind of shocked and confused. I read the affidavit, the probable cause affidavit for the arrest, and I felt like the investigative information that Detective Ferenczi, Detective Murphy, and I had compiled was more compelling than what was contained within the probable cause affidavit for Richard Allen's arrest. This is a credible, hard-working, uniformed cop that is out there, or, well, I don't know if he's uniformed, but whatever, detective. He's out there and he's doing stuff. He's helping people. And it seems like, he's baffled by the fact that the that they arrested Richard Allen when there was not as strong evidence against him versus what they had for Brad Holder, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, and whoever else I'm missing. All right, so what did you do based upon that thought? Well, I wasn't sure exactly what to do, so I reached out to a friend of mine who is a former prosecutor. All right, and what did you do after talking with him? Oh, wait, prosecutor and was a defense attorney for advice of what I should do. And what did you do after talking to him? We decided that we would draft a letter to McLeland's office, and that's what we did. Okay, I'm handing you what's been marked down now as Defendant's Exhibit A. If I could get you to review that for me, and then we're done. Let me know. Yes, this is part of the letter that was submitted to Mr. McLeland's office. Okay, and that was sent by certified mail? Yes, sir, it was. What date? It would have been sent in the mail on April 28th of 2023. Who did you send it to? Mr. McLeland's office. What was your reasoning for writing this letter? Just to make sure that he was aware of the investigative work that Detective Murphy and Detective Ferenczi and I had conducted. So these detectives got together and were like, we need to do something and let's make it happen. So they write a letter to the prosecutor, the DA, who's prosecuting the case. That's great. I mean, we need more stand-up people like that who stand up for, when something doesn't look right, you say something. All right, so would you also say you're Mr. Baldwin? Well, I'll move to admit Defendant's Exhibit A. Ms. Diner then interjects, Judge, this letter refers to his report, and it is a letter from 2023, and he indicated that he began his participation in June of 2018, And the rules regarding the case law regarding a motion to dismiss for destruction of exculpatory evidence, or even in the alternative, if it's potentially useful, determining whether the state acted in bad faith, has to do with what was known at the time of the particular item of evidence being missing, lost, or destroyed. This is far beyond that time period, and our argument is that it's not relevant for purposes of this hearing. The court says, any response? Mr. Baldwin says, if you're hiding evidence back in 2017, it might be something that you would do in 2023, and that is where this is headed. So, Ms. Steiner says, there's been no testimony of hidden evidence, Judge. Mr. Baldwin says, well, we're about to get into that. Love it. Court says, you keep telling me we're about to get into that, sir, and it takes time, Judge. I'm sorry, I will. I'll show defendant A's I'll show defendants A, Exhibit A, admitted over objection. I think the objection goes to the weight I will give this particular exhibit rather than the admissibility. Defendant's Exhibit A was admitted. Mr. Baldwin says, thank you, Judge. Question, in this document, you say, quote, I want to write to ensure you've been provided all of the information associated with the investigative efforts for your use in this case and for disclosure to opposing counsel as provided by law. Is that right? That is correct. Why'd you do that? Per the advice of my attorney, any information that was presented to the prosecutor's office should also be discoverable to any defense counsel. This guy's great. Okay, is that all you provided in the letter, the certified mailing that you sent to Nick McLeland? There was also a brief summary of our investigative product. I'm going to hand you what's now been marked as Defendant's Exhibit B and ask you to review that. Tell me when you're ready. Yes, this is the investigative summary that was included with the letter to Mr. McLeland's office. Pretty much, or if not all of it, of what you have already previously testified to is contained in Exhibit B. For the most part, yes. Mr. Baldwin, okay, moves to admit Exhibit B, which is offered. Diener says, or Diener, I say it wrong. Ms. Diener objects for the same reason. It's outside the scope of what's relevant to the evaluation of a missing recording from February 17th, 2017, discovered missing that same year. The court says all show B is admitted over objection. Again, it's the weight rather than admissibility. So at least Judge Gull is like allowing them to admit certain things even though they're being objected to by the state. All right, so question. So that was April the 29th that you sent this document detailing much of what your investigation involving Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, and Elvis Field. Is that correct? That is correct. So did you hear from Nick McLeland at any time during May of 2023? No, I did not. What about June of 2023? Did you hear from Nick McLeland at any time? No, I did not. What about July of 2023? No, I did not. What about August of 23? Did you hear from him then? I was contacted by Mr. Mullins of Mr. McLeland's office, and it was mid-August, I believe, of 2023. Tell me about that. He wanted to set up a meeting with me and Detective Holman and asked that I provide all of my investigative materials, which would include police report, audio, video, recordings of interviews, and then they told me that they would sit down with me to go over some of the evidence that they had against Mr. Allen to try and put my mind at ease. Put your mind at ease? That is correct. I want to talk about like videotapes of who? Who did you, well, strike that. Did you do that when you arrived? Yes, I did. Okay, Mr. McLeland asked you in May, or anybody from law enforcement asked you, did Mr. McLeland ask you? Sorry. in May, or did anybody in law enforcement ask you to bring any of those items in May of 2023? No, sir. Did anybody in law enforcement or in Mr. McLeland's office ask you to bring any of those pieces of evidence, videos of Elvis Fields and others in June of 2023? No, sir. July of 2023? No, sir. Okay, but it was in August of 2023. Yes. All right. So then what did you do? I went to Indiana State Police Post and met with the detectives, Mr. Holman and Mr. Vito, I believe. What happened there? I provided them with everything that I had. I provided them with a thumb drive that contained all of the interviews that I conducted. I believe there was some cell phone extraction data that was included in that, like my audio and video interviews. And then I sat down with Detective Vito for approximately an hour or so and just kind of gave a brief summary of the investigative work that Detective Ferenczi, Detective Murphy, and I had completed. Did they seem interested in your investigative efforts? In my opinion, no. Well, you said you were there because you were, how was it that you phrased it? You were concerned? That part of it was they were going to show me evidence against Mr. Allen to help put my mind at ease. Did they do that? No, sir. After that meeting with Vito and Holman and whoever else you said, what then happened? I left the state police post. As I was walking out, I noticed Brad Holder sitting in the front lobby. I went on out to my car and drove back to Rushville. After you drove back to Rushville, how often, if ever, did anybody from law enforcement contact you about what you had just provided them? I was never contacted. Did you ever contact them? I contacted them. I contacted Detective Holman, and why did you do that? Shortly after the Franks memorandum had been released, I was contacted by a friend of mine that stated a female by the name of Alicia Cole, who had had a child with Johnny Messer, had a cell phone of Johnny's that she believed I might be interested in. Interesting. Were you aware during the course of your investigation, before you kind of got off the investigation, of a phone that you would have liked to have had? Yes, we searched for several cell phones belonging to Johnny Messer that Johnny would have been using during the time that Abby and Libby would have been, their lives would have been ended. We actually referred to that cell phone as the Goldilocks cell phone. We believed that there might have been information contained on that cell phone. Okay. So, what did you do once you heard that somebody had contacted you about a cell phone that belonged to Johnny Messer? Did you say in 2017? That is correct. What did you do then? Ms. Diner interrupts and says, "May I renew my objection unless this Johnny Messer cell phone relates somehow to Brad Holder?" The court, yeah, Mr. Baldwin says it does. The court says sustained. Did you Mr. Baldwin, I don't know where I can go, Judge. I mean, did you contact anyone about this phone to go from the law enforcement side to go pick up this phone with evidence that you brought or that you thought might be on there from 2017? So did you contact any? Let me reread that. So first he's like, she sustains the objection, so he doesn't know where to go with this question. So he's like, "Judge, I don't know where it can go." But then this is his question. Did you contact anyone about this phone to go from the law enforcement side to go pick up this phone with evidence that you thought might be on there from 2017? He says, "I contacted Detective Holman." Okay, and what happened? I checked with Alicia Cole. When I spoke with Detective Holman, I explained to him the significance that we felt the cell phone provided. Detective Holman said that he would make arrangements to obtain the cell phone. I contacted Alicia Cole and told her that a Detective Holman from the state police would be contacting her to retrieve that cell phone. After approximately 2 weeks, I contacted Alicia just to make sure that the cell phone had been recovered by the state police, and it had not been. And then what happened? At that time, I contacted Brian Alvey, who's an investigator for your criminal defense team, advised him of the cell phone, and he went and retrieved the cell phone. Are you familiar with Celebrite and tell the judge what Celebrite is and what you know how to use it? Cellbrite is a program that law enforcement uses to extract data from electronic devices. You can, for a cell phone for example, you can recover data that is currently on the cell phone, that you can recover data that has been deleted from the cell phone. So you can recover the current data and deleted data from a cell phone. Okay, so have you had a chance to look at the results of a phone dump from 2023? I briefly looked at it, yes. Okay, I want to hand you what's marked as Defendant's Exhibit C, or should be. Are you familiar with this thumb drive? Yes, I am. Okay, what is it? This is a thumb drive that contains the extracted data from Patrick Westfall's cell phone. How much data was on there in terms of the dates? From what date to what date? There wasn't. Ms. Steiner, Judge, may I interrupt with a preliminary question? Yes. Did you already testify as to where the Westfall phone dump came from? No, I did not testify to that. Ms. Steiner, I would object on foundation. Foundation. Where did you get the phone dump information from? From you, sir. Okay, what I asked you to review, that was from me? That is correct. Ms. Steiner, do you have specialized training in Cellbrite? I have not been trained on the Cellbrite program. However, I am very familiar with the reports that are generated from the cell phone extractions. Ms. Steiner, but you are not trained. I have not been trained by the Cellbrite company, no. Ms. Steiner says, and when you were a law enforcement officer, did you have access to Cellbrite equipment in order to operate that and to complete examinations with regard to Cellbrite dumps? When I was a detective, I was an investigator for the Indiana State Police Crimes Against Children Task Force. Any cell phone that we had that we were going to do a forensic examination on, we would take to the Indiana State Police Cyber Crimes Unit. They would extract the data, and then they would provide me with the data that was extracted. Ms. Steiner, no other questions. And sir, Baldwin continues questioning, and sir, that phone dump that you looked at today, that's what you have seen in other cases. That's the extraction. That is correct. What dates did Patrick Westfall on his phone have for that extraction? The first date of significant extracted detail that I saw was on August 12th of 2023. What about the last date? I did not review that. Okay, did you see anything in July of 2023? Texts, emails, photographs, anything like that? No, I did not. What about, let's go back to April. Anything in April? No, sir. Anything in January? Court says, excuse me, would counsel approach, please? Sidebar conference conducted. The court says, none of this is in your motion. Not one shred of this is in your motion. Your motion deals with a document dated February 17th, 2017. It is an FBI report of Brad Holder. And on the same day, strike that, February 19th, the interview of Patrick Westfall. That is what you have complained about in your motion. Right. None of this is in your motion. This is the evidence to support the motion and to counteract Mr. McLeland's argument that there's not bad faith, and that the court says, this is very specific, Mr. Baldwin. You did not incorporate any of this information in your motion to dismiss. Ms. Diner says, may I speak to our response? Sure. Our response about bad faith, we don't even get to bad faith unless they show that it's exculpatory, and then, in the alternative, that it's potentially, or the alternative that it's potentially useful. So it could either be exculpatory or potentially useful to the defense. And they have to prove then that it was done with, you know, on purpose, that it was deleted on purpose. We have gotten, we haven't even gotten to potentially useful for the recording that's missing of Brad Holder. So our response about bad faith is after we get through whatever we're in the category of materially exculpatory, which is the heading of their motion or potentially useful, and we aren't at either now, at either one. Mr. Baldwin says, what you would learn, Judge, is that Patrick Westfall, his phone, he brought his phone in to the police at their request. And the phone that he brought to them only had 4 days, knowing that he was going there, that he brought a phone with no data on it, predating when he knew he was going in there, i.e., it's either scrubbed or he brought a new phone. And that goes towards Judge showing that he had a predisposition or he was trying to hide evidence, and when he's trying to hide evidence, that then goes toward, well, if he wasn't trying to hide evidence in 2023, that was what was he doing back in 2017? The court says, then perhaps you should have pled that because you did not plead that in that particular motion, that I am not holding in my hand, that I am holding in my hand. Ms. Diener, or Diener, I don't know, whatever. Ms. Diener says, and if I may say, Judge, the content of the motion with regard to Patrick Westfall says that they have been given a narrative and there is no recording. And dogs are all rushing down the stairs. They're so loud with their toes. Sorry. All right. Where was I? And if I may, Judge, the content of the motion with regard to Patrick Westfall says that they have been given a narrative and there is no recording, and they are speculating as to whether we're not telling the truth about whether there's a recording. So I have a witness here to testify to that effect. So our preparation has been for the allegation of a dismissal based on destruction of exculpatory evidence. It is specific to the recording of Brad Holder of February 17th of 2017 that was discovered missing or lost in August of 2017. That's their time window, the court says. And I've given you a lot of leeway. None of this testimony, very little of this testimony, deals with your motion to dismiss for destroying exculpatory evidence as you pled. You can stand there and tell me all you want, but this is what you pled, and I'm not hearing any evidence about it. Mr. Baldwin says, in order to win on that, we don't have to plead everything that's going to happen in a trial. I mean, the court says, no, but you do in a motion to dismiss. You have to put the other party on notice, which you did, and they filed a particularized response to it. Mr. Baldwin says, if you're not going to allow me to do it, I can do an offer to prove, and we, like a proffer, whatever it's called, and we can move this hearing along a little bit more quickly. The court says you can do an offer to prove. That's fine. Yes. Mr. Baldwin says, as it relates to Patrick Westfall and his phone, the missing, as it relates to Brad Holder, what you have is in your pleading, the court says. Ms. Diener says Brad Holder is the missing interview. That's what's destroyed. Mr. Baldwin says, well, Patrick Westfall too. Ms. Diener says, no, he does not have a recording. This is about a lost recording. You've been given the narrative of Patrick Westfall. There is no recording. Mr. Baldwin says, that's the point. Ms. Diener says, you're alleging. Mr. Baldwin says, that's the point. There's not a recording. Attorney James Luttrell steps in and says, that's not destruction of evidence. Ms. Diener says, your dismissal's based on destruction of evidence. Yeah, all right. The court says, let's get to that. Okay. The court says, and if you want to do an offer to prove, do an offer to prove. All right, so sidebar, conference concluded. So that was their entire conference. Luckily, we got to hear it. All right, so Mr. Baldwin continues, I'll do an offer to prove. All right, let's move on to Brad Holder. You said you saw Brad Holder outside the interview room, correct? When you left? I saw him in the lobby of the state police post. What kind of questions do you do? I'm sorry. What kind of questions would you expect state police to be asking Brad Holder in an interview as an investigator? Ms. Diner, objection, judge, speculation, sustained. I'm handing you what's going to be marked as Defendant's Exhibit D. Can you identify that for me, please? Yes, this is a thumb drive that contains the audio recording of an interview conducted by Brad Holder. With Brad Holder, sorry, not by him, with him. And did you get a chance to review that? Yes, I did. Mr. Baldwin, move to admit Defendant's Exhibit D. Ms. Diner says, I have a couple more questions, Judge. Mr. Click, what date is this interview from? He says August 30th of 2023. Ms. Diner says, state would object based on relevance with regard to a missing recording from 2017, which is the subject of this motion. What a BATCH. She's like, okay, well, Judge Gull keeps sustaining my objections, and I'm just going to go with it then. Anything that's outside of 2017, I'm just going to object. And then he can't do anything. That's basically what she's doing right now. Mr. Baldwin continues, this is a Brad Holder interview, Judge, that Van be prepared to the transcripts that are memorialized, one page, 100 words, or something like that, memorialized of the 2017 missing videotape. So I think that that's certainly appropriate and relevant. Ms. Diener says, Judge, I'm sorry, can you restate how that's relevant? I'm missing the connection. Mr. Baldwin says, well, there's a missing video in 2017, and then the state followed up with an interview in 2023, and what's contained in here, which, if anything, is different, that's in here versus over the 2017, that would show that the missing evidence has value, so that's the relevance. Ms. Diner says, Judge, the evaluation of the value of this missing evidence, again, the case law, which I'm sure the court's well familiar with, that is cited in both the defense's motion and in the state's motion, makes it very clear that with regard to missing evidence, the evaluation is specific to the time during which the evidence went missing. That's in 2017. She keeps hammering this. This interview in 2023 is not relevant to that timeline. Again, well, how are you supposed to know that it was deleted if you don't know in the future that it happened? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like you won't know that it was deleted in 2017 if you didn't have the follow-up interview to say that there was a 2017 interview. All right, again, we are way beyond what the law requires for the motion to dismiss for destruction of exculpatory evidence. The judge says, your objection is well-founded. I will show it and not admit D. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge, if what's contained in the memorialized transcript or report from 2017 has different information than what is contained in the 2023 interview, how can that not be relevant? The court says, based on your pleading, sir, it is not relevant. Wow. All right, Mr. Baldwin continues, I will offer to prove then, if that's okay, I will summarily detail what Mr. Click would have testified to and what the exhibit would show. Is that okay, Judge? The court says yes, make an offer to prove. Mr. Baldwin, thank you. What you would learn from Mr. Click and his review of this document or this exhibit that Brad West, the 2023 videotaped interview, as well as the videotaped interview itself, is this. Brad Holder had never asked a single question about Elvis Fields. Brad Holder was never asked a single question about Johnny Messer. Brad Holder was never asked a single question about what his ex-wife Amber Holder said, that Brad Holder confessed that Patrick Westfall was involved in the case and was involved in the unalivings, that Brad Holder was scared of Patrick Westfall. All of that would be missing. Also, you would find that in the 2023 interview, Brad Holder claims that he met Abby one time, but in 2017 memorialized paper, he said he never met her. All of that. Ms. Diener says, Judge, I renew my objection. The statements made to counsel with regard to Brad Holder not being questioned about Fields, Messer, or the ex-wife is all conjecture as to whether that information was even helpful to police. Again, these people are not on the inside of the investigation, and they're making an evaluation from the outside and then transposing what Mr. Click knows from reviewing interviews that have been provided in defense or through his own investigation and its relevance as to what the law enforcement agencies knew in 2017 with regard to the interview of Brad Holder on February 17th of 2017 and the time period between then and when the interview recording was lost. That was a really long sentence. Sorry. I gotta take a breath after that. It's a very specific time frame. It's their motion. I don't understand why we're so far beyond it. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge. Ms. Diener says, but I'd appreciate your consideration. Mr. Baldwin says, part of the evidence is also we did not receive any of those videos for 10 months after they were owed to us. 3 months, almost 4 months after McLeland and his office was provided this documentation from Mr. Click telling him we have all this evidence of other suspects. I think it's all relevant, but I will move on. The court says, please do. Mr. Baldwin says, actually, that's all the questions I have. The court says, any cross-examination of Todd Click. Questions by Ms. Diener. Mr. Click, in 2023, you were no longer with law enforcement. That is correct. And you wrote a letter to the prosecutor about this investigation that you knew had been going on since 2017. That is correct. And you actually participated in it at the request of, you described it being Ferenczi and Murphy. Is that correct? That is correct. Oops. And so, if you prepared investigative materials and collected evidence, and they were your connection to this investigation, why would they not have been given all your information so that it was forwarded on to the Unified Command? Answer. They were provided with everything that was completed. Why didn't you do that? No, I did provide them with that information. You gave it to Ferenczi and Murphy? Ferenczi and Murphy, yes. Okay, so as long as Ferenczi and Murphy passed it along, because you guys were all working together, there'd be no reason to think they didn't have it, correct? That is correct. You make statements about Mr. Holder and Mr. Westfall wearing Vinlander t-shirts. Does that mean something? Why do you know it's a Vinlander t-shirt? Because the t-shirt said Vinlander across the chest. You said you've known Elvis Fields for a long time. Yes, I have. He's a local in your area? Yes, he is. What's the mental capacity for Mr. Fields? I know he did not complete high school. Does he have diminished mental capacity? That I do not know. Have you ever contacted him? Yes, I have. Often? Yes, I have. I know he's not a very smart individual as far as if he's been diagnosed with any type of intellectual disability or anything like that. I'm not aware. Ms. Diener says, no other questions. The court says, Mr. Baldwin, redirect. Of Todd Click. Mr. Baldwin says, did you ever run into anybody in your time as a detective that had low mental capacity that committed crimes? Yes, sir. Serious crimes? Yes, sir. Mr. Baldwin, thank you. I did want to supplement my previous offer to prove with Judge, if I may, and then I'll be done with him. Go ahead. Mr. Baldwin continues. Also, you would find that on this videotaped interview of Brad Holder, he is not asked about why he and Patrick Westfall were no longer friends, as described by Amy Holder, who said that it had something to do with a ritual gone bad in a forest by a river. With that, I am done with this witness. Ms. Diener says, again, the state would object that it was not known to law enforcement at the time that the video went missing, and that's the reason that we're here. The court says, and your objection is well noted. You may step down, sir. The witness says, thank you. The court says, would you give that exhibit to the court reporter, please? Witness says, I'm free to go, Your Honor. I didn't subpoena you. Okay. He's asking if he's released, and he's released from the defense. Okay. Call Amber Holder. Witness sworn in. Now, this is the direct examination of Amber Holder, who is, I believe she's the ex-wife now of Bradley Holder. All right. So questions by Mr. Baldwin. Again, state your name for the record, please. Amber Holder. How old are you, Amber? I'm 33. Okay. What do you do for a living? I'm a manager at Public Storage. I work 11 properties. You work 11 properties doing what? I clean the inside of the properties and the outside and help customers. Okay. How long have you been doing that? Maybe a year and 3 months. Okay. I'll get right to this. Have you ever talked to the police about the unalivings in Delphi? Yes. How many times? Twice. Okay, let's talk about the first time you talked to the police. You remember where that happened? Yes, at my grandmother's. Okay, how long was that? The whole interview? Maybe an hour. What did you talk about? Ms. Diner, objection. Judge, I would ask that he establish the date of this to determine relevance to this motion. Question, was the court? Yeah, when was this? Question, when was that? I'm not sure. I'm not good with dates. Was it after the girls were unalived? Yes. They were investigating the unalivings? Yes. Okay. Ms. Daner, I renew my objection. It still needs to be within 2017 before the video was missing. The court says, do you have the date that she was interviewed? Answer, I was. The court says, no, I'm not. I'm asking Mr. Baldwin, yeah. Counsel, when was he interviewed? Mr. Baldwin, I think it was 2018. Okay, then again, Ms. Diner, that would be after. The court says, would counsel approach, please? Sidebar conference conducted. The court says, I'm sorry, I don't know how to make myself any clearer to you that you've made specific allegations in your pleading that you are held to. Calling witnesses up here that have been interviewed well past that date is not well-founded and it's improper. Mr. Baldwin says, I respectfully disagree with you, Judge. I think we plead and then we prove our pleadings through our other evidence. The state, in its charging information, didn't include I think that's supposed to be every single piece of information. The court says that's not what we're talking about here, Mr. Baldwin. We're here to talk about your motion to dismiss for destroying exculpatory evidence, where you claim that the document dated February 17th of 2017 of Mr. Holder and February 19th of Mr. Westfall were destroyed. That's the very narrow focus of what it is we're here for. Yeah. The court says, and if you don't have witnesses that are going to testify to these things, you're wasting everybody's time. Wow, what a bitch. Mr. Baldwin says, as Mr. McLeland argued in his response, Judge, that we have to prove that the state of Indiana or the law enforcement knew back in 2017 that there was material or exculpatory evidence. Or helpful evidence, and also that there was bad faith. At the end of the road here, there is an argument to be made that back in 2017, based upon everything that you have heard, that the police knew that there was exculpatory evidence on there, and the court says, and where is that evidence? That's what I keep asking you. Where is the specific evidence? Because she wasn't interviewed until 2018, so how did the police know that in 2017 when you claim that they destroyed it? Mr. Baldwin says, Police are not ever going to say, I destroyed exculpatory evidence. It is not going to happen. What is going to happen is other evidence comes out, like what's contained in the Franks memo, that shows that there is an ongoing hiding of evidence, not refusing to investigate things that, and this is what we're trying to do. I can't, if you expect that there's going to be a police officer that they're going to call and I'm going to call that's going to say, I erased exculpatory evidence, that is never going to happen anywhere in this world. Ms. Diner says, Judge, he has to show that the exculpatory evidence based on what was known on the date, I'm getting annoyed with this lady, on that date or in that time frame, I'm doing a voice for her, before we have to show that it is not the result of bad faith. And if he shows it's exculpatory, bad faith doesn't even matter. If he can't show exculpatory and or in the potentially useful category that we get to show that it was not as a result of bad faith. So his first burden is to show that it is materially exculpatory, the video that's missing. That's the burden. Mr. Baldwin says it's an impossible burden, Judge, because it is missing. The court says, that is unfortunate, but Ms. Diner says, then concede and shift to potentially useful. The court, that's what the case law says, Mr. Baldwin. Well, the court says, I can't change the law. Mr. Baldwin says, well, this is how we prove it, is by showing other evidences of police behavior, bad behavior, not, and then you can surmise as a judge, well, if all this happened, then it could have happened back then. So you can think, well, if they're doing it then they did it then too. If they're doing it now, All right, so Ms. Diner says, I'm sorry, that's not what the case law indicates. The court says, no, that is not what the case law says, sir. And if that's all you have, then we're done. Then I will offer to prove. No, then we're done. If that's all you have. Mr. Baldwin says, I'm going to offer to prove, Judge, an offer of proof, and then we will be done. We are done, sir. Mr. Baldwin says, for the record, they have a right to offer to prove so that the Court of Appeals can understand, what we're doing, and we will have no record unless I offer to prove, Judge. The court says, well, you can sum up your offer to prove, Mr. Baldwin, but again, if all of the evidence that you have is after the dates that you allege, then your offer to prove is, Mr. Baldwin says, if Amber, thank you, Judge. Sidebar, conference concluded. Mr. Baldwin says, if Amber Holder were allowed to testify, she would have told you, or she would tell you that police, including Jerry Holman and the other people that were deposed by the defense counsel in August of 2023, have never talked to Amber Holder since August of 2023. She would testify that Brad Holder talked about the DELPHI case, that Brad Holder told her that he and Patrick Westphal had a falling out over a ritual in the woods near a river because Patrick Westphal wanted to up the ante from animal sacrifices. If Amber Holder were allowed to testify, she would tell you that Patrick Westphal, according to Brad Holder, committed these crimes. He is protected by powerful people. She would also testify that she saw on Brad Holder's phone girls that he knew that he posed on the ground with sticks, and that she knows are runes from her own heathenism belief system, that they were runes on these girls in the forms of sticks, and that he had them on his phone, and there were multiple photos on his phone. And finally, that she would also testify that Brad Holder knew Abby Williams much better than he told the police. He told her that he met her several times. That is the end of my offer of proof in this witness. Thank you. The court says, do you have any questions for her? Ms. Diener says, I have no questions for this witness. The court says, you may step down, ma'am. Mr. Baldwin says, we have no other evidence, Judge. The defense rests. So the court says, all right, Ms. Diener. Mr. Baldwin says, Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. I did. I wanted to. I apologize. I wanted to ask for the court to take judicial notice of the Frank's memo as it relates to this request to dismiss charges that included Jerry Holman's deposition. I would also ask for the court to take judicial notice. Well, I was going to move to admit, well, I think the Frank's memo, taking judicial notice of that will be sufficient for what I need to do and argue. Thank you. The court says, when did you file the Frank's memo? Mr. Baldwin says September 18th, 2023. The court says, all right, I will take judicial notice of that specific Frank's motion filed September 18th, 2023. Mr. Baldwin says, and this is important because she even admitted to never even reading Frank's memo, which is asinine. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion, that she never even read the memo. She admitted it in court. But that was also when she was trying to get Baldwin and Rosie off of the case. Anyways, so all right, I will take judicial notice of it. Mr. Baldwin says, and the exhibits contained in it, Judge, as also part of that. Oh, and the supplemental Frank's, the second Frank's motion as well. We'd ask for, and its exhibits as well. That was filed, I believe, October the 3rd, 2023. The court says, so you don't wish me to take judicial notice of the supplemental motion for Frank's hearing that you filed October 2nd? I do. I must have. I thought it was October the 3rd. It was the 2nd. The court says, well, there was one filed October 2nd, and then there was one filed on the 3rd. Mr. Baldwin says, and then there was one more recent, and I'll just throw that in as well for you to take judicial notice of the one filed a week or two ago. So that was the 3rd. We read that on this channel. I don't remember to take the date for purposes of this argument. So he wants the Frank's memo and then the 2nd and 3rd supplemental motion to the Frank's memo. All right, so the court says, and when did you file this one? I don't have that at the tip of my tongue here, Judge. It was a week, probably 2 weeks ago. The court says, I don't see one filed 1, 2, or 3 weeks ago. Give me a second. I don't have it, but I know it was filed. The court says, well, I can't take judicial notice of something that you can't tell me about. Wow, this woman is so rude for no reason. March 13th. March 13th. Okay, the court then will all take judicial notice of the Frank's motions filed the 18th, October 2nd, October 3rd, and March 13th. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge, does that include all of the exhibits, which I'm asking for judicial notice of all the exhibits as well? The court says, I don't see any exhibits attached to the last one. Mr. Baldwin says, yeah, I don't think there were on that one. The court says, I don't see exhibits from the ones in October either. Mr. Baldwin says, then just the first one. The court says, Ms. Diner, you may proceed. Ms. Diner, thank you. The state will call Steve Mullen. So this is a direct examination of Stephen Mullen. Officer Mullen, you've already been on the stand today, but I'm going to have you repeat some of that information since this is a separate hearing for a separate purpose, okay? Yes. Please state your full name, spell your first and last name, and tell us were you employed. Stephen L. Mullins, he spells it out. I am an investigator with the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. And when did you begin as prosecutor's investigator? In January of 2020. The investigation of Abby and Libby was well underway by that time, was it not? Yes, it was. What was your position in 2017 about when the unalivings occurred? I was a chief of police in Delphi. And I believe we covered this as well, but how many total years do you have in law enforcement? 42. So I think what they're referring to, there were 2 hearings that day. So I'm not sure. We must not have the first hearing on here. This is just the second hearing, like the afternoon hearing. So I'm not sure if we didn't get it because I thought there were 2 hearings that day. All right. So apparently Mullins had already been on the stand at this point, and she's asked him already how many years he had been in law enforcement. He says 42. I believe you indicated you had been with the Delphi PD, then with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department as a detective, then back with the city as chief, and now with the prosecutor's office. Is this correct? He's bouncing all over the place. He says that is correct. And what is your role in the prosecutor's office with regard to the state versus Richard Allen? I handle and manage the evidence, most of the evidence in the Richard Allen case, and process it and make sure the defense has it in discovery. So you're cataloging it and keeping track of what's passed along to defense. Is that correct? I am, yes. Cell phone rings. The court, I'm sorry, Ms. Diener, whose phone is going off? It almost sounds like it's in the next room. Mr. Baldwin says, I apologize, Your Honor, inaudible. Oh, it is ringing. Attorney Nicholas McClellan, Judge, there's a phone right here, too. I don't know what that is. Mr. Baldwin, it was turned off, but now it's on. Is this yours also, Mr. Baldwin? Yeah, oh, I can grab that later. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt your... Are you familiar with the Brad Holder interview in 2017? I am. Is there anyone... Is there only one? That's correct. Ms. Diener, may I approach, Judge? You may. Mr. Mullen, I'd like to show you what is marked as Exhibit 1, State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that document? Yes, I do. Okay, and how would you describe it? This is what's called an Orion document. In other words, it's a narrative of a report, which Special Agent Adam Pohl created after his interview with Brad Holder, and that narrative was placed into the Orion FBI Orion RMS report system. That is part of discovery. Is that correct? Yes, it is. And that interview was on what date? It was done according to the report on 2/17 of 2017. And is Agent Pohl with what agency? Agent Pohl is a special agent with the FBI, and he was assisting at that time? Yes. With the investigation? That is correct. Ms. Diener, State would move to admit Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1 is offered. Mr. Baldwin, no objection. The court, all right, without objection, one is admitted. You indicated that report is part of Orion and would be contained in discovery. With regard to preparation for today's hearing, are there other places that you know that particular narrative to be located within discovery? Yes, the narrative would also be in the FBI general reports that were furnished to us in discovery. And did you prepare records? Ms. Diener says, oh, Judge, may I go back to Exhibit 1? We would ask that be admitted under seal because it is discovery that has a protective order and it contains discovery information. I think that would be appropriate. It's the report. No objection of Brad Holder. All right. I'll show it's sealed then. All right, so she continues on. So I'm sorry you compared documents with regards to discovery on each disclosure or each disbursement to defense. Is that correct? Yes. I'd like to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 2. Just check all the pages. Make sure you recognize the entire document. Do you recognize that 19-page document? Yes. And how would you describe the contents of that exhibit? This is an exhibit of the itemized list of discovery which was given to the defense, and they were signed to the document as having reviewed the items listed in each page. So you use this to keep track of what you've given them and on what date it was provided. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Judge, may I leave a copy with him in order to... Sure. State would move to admit Exhibit 2 under seal. Baldwin, no objection. The court says all right without objection. 2 is admitted and sealed. Question. Now, can you point to that document and provide to us information about when this narrative report of Special Agent Pohl from 2/17/2017 interview of Brad Holder would have been provided? The report should have been provided in the disbursement titled 04 Allen, dated as received by an agent from Mr. Rosie's office on February 13th, 2023. And when you look at the discovery disclosure, that's number 4, by looking at that, would a person unfamiliar with the evidence drives or how they're named know that this report is contained within the discovery disclosure? The disclosure says that there was a 3.5-inch SATA internal hard drive containing the files 04 Allen with several files and also a box containing hard drives. This also contained the FBI documents then. And we also maintained a copy of whatever was given to the defense and a disqualification of the data that was given to them on site in a particular file that goes along with this document. Question. And so the report that you identified in Exhibit 1, you identified as an Orion report and you believed it to be contained in disclosure number 4. In 4. 4, yes, okay. And on that was on February 13th of 2023. And that was on February 13th of 2023. That's correct. Question. And then in preparation for today, did you also print out screenshots that would show what is contained within Discovery Disclosure number 4 to be certain that the FBI reports, the Orion reports, and the state police reports were all contained therein? I did. Here's State's Exhibit number 3. Can you identify that? It is 3 pages. I can. And can you describe it for the court? This is a screenshot taken from the computer screen which displayed the files which were contained in this February 13th of 2023 dispersal of evidence. It shows the FBI files, Indiana State Police files, some search warrants, the 04 discovery receipt actually, and then 5 Excel documents which quantify the data contained on the hard drives. And then on the subsequent pages, what does that provide for reference? Thank you. The subsequent page, the next page, shows the Indiana State Police report, which at this time was redacted, and it shows 3 separate files. They received 3 separate files because this report in their system was too large for one particular case report. The next page shows the file which had the FBI general reports in it. And then the next is in Orion, the download of the Orion file dated 12/2/2022. Now, this interview by Agent Pohl of Brad Holder was subsequently discovered that the audio/video recording was no longer available. Is that correct? That is correct. Can you describe the circumstances and how you learned that it was no longer available? Where would you like me to begin? Start with the description of where the interview recording was kept. At the beginning of the investigation, we started out at the Delphi Police Department, and at that time, as chief, I had just installed a new interview system. It was a DVR, which we had put in because we didn't want anything sufficient in the county. We didn't have anything sufficient in the county to be able to record interviews within the city of Delphi. So we put in a new interview system. So as we used the facility at the Delphi Police Department for the investigation process, wait, so when did they put it in? It didn't say. I don't know. All right, so at the beginning of the investigation, we started out at the Delphi Police Department. At that time, as chief, I had just installed the new interview system. So weird. It was DVR. Okay. So as we used the facility at the Delphi Police Department for the investigation process, it became natural for everyone to use the interview room at the City Police Department, which was located downstairs inside the police department. And as interviews were conducted, officers would go into the interview room, flip on the switch on the outside, illuminate a blue light to indicate the recording was operating, and when they concluded, they would shut the interview room down. The recording off, turning the switch off. The DVR was located outside the squad room at the police department, and it was sitting on top of a filing cabinet. And At that time, I was more or less obtaining the video off of the DVR for the officers at their request so they could attach it to their reports. And you were not part of the lead agencies for this investigation, is that correct? As chief of police, I was not part of the investigation, but I had become part of the unified command somehow. Because of your position as chief of police in Delphi? Yes. And so the lead agencies would be whom, if you know? Indiana State Police, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, and obviously the FBI. Okay, and so tell us about the discovery of loss of video that includes the Brad Holder 20 to the Brad Holder, I think it's February 20th to February, no, what's this 20? Something 20. February 17th, 2017 interview. Around August 2017, I went into the police department to recover a video off of the DVR, which I believe was unrelated to this particular case, and noted that the DVR was recording continuously. This meant that any recording that was on the DVR prior to the date, I don't know why the whatchamacallit got so dark and it was really hard to read. I don't know what happened. It's better. Okay. I, through my investigation, found that the last date of the interview was either the 19th or the 20th of February 2017. So unfortunately, all of the interviews that had been conducted during that period of time and after the crime, homicide, was discovered up to that date were gone. Okay, so all of the recordings up until that date were gone. Immediately when I discovered that the recorder was recording continuously, I unplugged it and contacted the vendor, and we determined that the videos were gone and that somehow the settings had been changed in the DVR to only record when the switch was activated to record continuously, and we have no idea how it could have happened. I call baloney. And have you consulted with the vendor about the particular issue to discern whether it was from a person versus just a spontaneous event like electricity going out or unplugging the equipment? I have. I've talked to the vendor, and he has told me that on many occasions with the DVRs which he uses or sells, that a power surge or unplugging the DVR could change the settings in the DVR so that it could record continuously. So the unaliving of the girls is February 13th of 2017, and that's when they're reported missing, correct? Yes. And the investigation began as soon as the bodies were found. Would that be fair to say? Yes. And then your discovery would indicate the interviews conducted in that interview room with that DVR were missing from 2014 until February 20th. Not including February 20th. I think there was some still available to be seen on the day of the 20th. Okay, there might be some missing, but some are there for the 20th. Yes, and I should also add that some of the audio was missing even for the times where there was actually video visible. So you might not have heard anything, just seen the video. So there may be video that's visible, but the audio randomly sometimes is not available to be heard. I just find that too convenient. All very convenient. Okay, did you or anyone that you know of intentionally leave the recording on so that it would delete interviews? Absolutely not. Do you consider this to be either human error or just a spontaneous event with the DVR recording? That's the only explanation I can provide. Now, during which, you didn't say which one or the other. All right, so now, during that time period, there was also a follow-up interview with Brad regarding Brad Holder. Is that correct? Follow-up interviews to finish the lead or tip investigation. Is that right? Can you be more specific in your question, please? Sure, when Brad Holder was initially interviewed, what was going on with the investigation during the first few days where officers would be, like Special Agent Pohl, would be sent to make contact with someone? Can you describe for us what was going on? My recollection of the process was as each day would happen, we would start with a meeting in the beginning of the day, and tips and leads would be assigned to officers to follow up on, or throughout the day, as officers became available, they would follow up on tips and leads as they had time to do so. If people walked into the city building as a way to provide information to officers in the investigation, someone on station would take that someone on station would take that interview someone at the station, I'm assuming, would take that interview and talk to the person who was providing the information. If someone came to the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, they would either be instructed to come to the police department so they could talk with them there, or, clear's throat, excuse me, a phone number, a contact, or contact information would be forwarded to someone in the command structure so that that could be followed up on as soon as possible. Question. And were instructions given on in the morning of these daily meetings about use of the DVR if someone wished to use it? Yes, they were instructed as to how to turn the recorder on and to be sure to turn it off afterwards. And when you discovered that it had been continuously running, did you look to see if someone had left the switch on, which would cause it to then run continuously? Thank you, I did. But I knew it wasn't on because the switch was located in a very conspicuous location in the hallway at the police department. If I were to walk into the police department through the door from the outside, I would immediately see the blue light on the interview room switch, and I would realize somebody left it on, and so it would be turned off. On that day, there was no light on. Okay, and the actual hard drive in this DVR, how much data could it hold? I believe it was, I'm sorry, I think it was 6 terabytes. My report reflects the size. That's quite a lot. A lot? Yeah, okay. Okay, so my question is to you, during this time period between when let's go back to the way that the leads were conveyed. So you have these meetings each day. Officers come, you have this contact with them to give them instructions. Would it be fair to say that you have different officers pretty much every day depending on who's available? It was quite fair to say there was different officers every day. There were officers who worked within the department who were coming every day, but there were also officers who came outside of the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, Indiana State Police. There were officers from West Lafayette, Tippecanoe County's Sheriff's Department, and others. In fact, Special Agent Adam Pohl and Hammond's Police Special Sergeant Christopher Goatee, who appear on these reports, or is it Gootee? I don't know. Right. Are not local officers? No, they are not local to our area. And so, in what capacity were they at these meetings or assisting? Special Agent Pohl and Christopher Gootee were there to assist us in the process of following up on tips, and they, like the others, would be there at the beginning of the day and receive instructions, or throughout the day receive new instructions on who to go interview and to follow up on. Can you give us a brief description of what a person in their capacity would be asked to do when following up on a lead or tip in order to be useful in the investigation? They would seek out the information from seek out the person they were needed to talk with, and then interview them concerning the information that was either provided about them or from them. And then, if that person was, would there be anything about that person that might cause the officer to need to do more than just an initial interview? For example, find out where they were on the day of February 13th or February 14th? Yes. All the officers were asked to follow up on that completely or as much as possible to determine where they were at on February 13th, around the time we believe the homicides were to have occurred. Okay, so that brings me back to Brad Holder. Before the video was lost or discovered, lost in August of 2017, and after Sergeant Agent Pohl did his interview on February 17th of 2017, was there additional follow-up with regard to Bradley Holder that you know exists because of your intimate knowledge, of discovery and taking care of reports with regard to this case? There is. And do you recall what it is? I'm sorry? Do you recall what it is? Yes. I'm gonna show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 4. I apologize. Can you identify that? There we go. Okay. Sorry. Can you identify that? Oh, I can. Okay. Can you describe that for us? This is the report which was completed by Special Agent Rich Davies of the FBI. It details follow-up which was done and relayed to him by Grid Officer, which is a task force officer assigned to the FBI, Fred Rogers, where he followed up on Brad Holder's work history on the date of February 13th, 2017. Okay, and so that would be a lead follow-up, correct? Yes, yes. And did the content of that provide information as to Brad Holder's whereabouts during that particular day when the unalivings were believed to have occurred? Yes, it did. Okay, and so with regard to leads being assigned to officers, would this lead to a particular event with regard to lead follow-up with Unified Command? Does it put it in a particular category? Is it considered completed for the time being? Yes. Okay. It completed the investigation concerning Mr. Holder, unless something new became available? Correct. Okay. During the time period between when the first interview was taken and recorded and the date that you were made aware that the first recording is missing, are these the only interviews of Mr. Holder that occurred? Yes. And the second interview or the second report really isn't an interview of Mr. Holder. It's follow-up about Mr. Holder. Is that right? That's correct. Okay, so at the time that the video was lost, destroyed, whatever terminology one might use, was Brad Holder a key suspect in this case? No, according to this guy. The state would move to the admission of Exhibit 4 under seal. So it is. Any objection? No. Da, 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 da. There's Mr. Baldwin says, yeah, no objection, Judge. I'm sorry. Judge, did I admit Exhibit 3? That was the 3 pages of screenshots. The court says, yes, you did. Diener says, the court would move to admit Exhibit 3 with regard to the screenshots. It's a 3-page document. All right, Mr. Baldwin says no objection. All right, it's moved into evidence. State's Exhibit 3 admitted. In fact, during the first 7 days of the investigation from February 13th until February 20th, the period of time where the audio-video recordings are missing, was anyone considered a key suspect to your knowledge? To my knowledge, no. Do you have knowledge that Patrick Westfall was interviewed? Yes, I do. In February of 2017? Yes, I do. Wouldn't it be yes, he did? Yes, he was? All right, so I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 5. It has 2 pages. Can you identify that? I can. And what does that document contain? This is a report that would have been found in the FBI general reports given to the defense in discovery detailing an interview which took place on Sunday, February 19th, 2017, conducted by Special Agent Adam Pohl and Officer Guti with the Hammond Police Department, where they did an interview of Patrick Westfall's residents of Patrick Westfall. And is that particular document also contained within discovery as previously testified to? Yes. In the same location as documents with regards to Brad Holder? Yes. Um, in the FBI general reports and in Orion, and it is, I believe, it's in Orion. Yes. As Diener says, state would move to admit Exhibit 5. No objection. Question. There have been some questions raised about whether a video of Patrick Westfall exists or has been destroyed by the state. Do you have knowledge about that? One never existed. And what do you rely on for that information? They went to Patrick Westfall's residence. 1, it is uncommon for the FBI to record their interviews. 2, we talked with Special Agent Pohl, who told us that he did not record the interview by any means and only memorialized it in his report. And that's a problem. We need body cams on all cops every second of their working day. They should have body cams on recording their own actions just as much as others. Question. And just to reiterate, even though you've already answered this in a general sense, was Patrick Westfall a key suspect in 2017? No. Did you make attempts to retrieve or somehow recreate lost video from the continuous play of the DVR? First of all, I contacted the vendor and we discussed options for recovery, and then I presented the DVR the DVR DVD to the Indiana State Police to see if they could recover the video. It was never recovered. It was never recovered? Correct. In the discovery disclosures, did you share with defense that the DVR for the time period of February 14th until the 20th had missing files, and if so, in what way? From my memory, I believe that I informed the agent from Mr. Rosie's office that there were problems with some of the video and that they could try to recover whatever video they could, but they had, in essence, the same thing that we did. I did not document that in any way at that time of the release, at that stage before they withdrew themselves from the case. Okay. So, on the discovery, disclosure, or transfer to defense that we refer to as the 04, based on the number that's on the top, it's from February 13th of 2023 that contained these interviews in written form, but is that the same day or time when you would have transferred any audio recordings, or is it possibly on another day? I'm sorry, Ms. Diner, can you rephrase the question? Yeah, could you? Yeah, the 04 disclosure that you talked about that contained these written reports from FBI and Orion from February of 2017, if there was video recordings that were also given, would they have been at the same time or some other disclosure? I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly when I gave them, what I gave them at that point. I'd have to look at my records to be able to refresh my memory. I'm sorry. That's okay. It's a lot of information. And at some point, the defense specifically asks for video of Brad Holder. Is that correct? Yes. And was a detailed response provided through the discovery disclosure? Yes. And indicated to them that there were lost recordings. Yes. And his was one of them? Yes. Was Brad Holder the only recording that was lost? Heavens no. Okay. And the recordings weren't just for this investigation, were they? There were other investigations that were probably conducted during that period of time in this same interview room that were destroyed as well. He said probably. Probably is not an answer. Probably is not a definitely. And do you have any way of recreating a list of all of the interviews that happened during that time frame? I do not. And if officers did what was expected, which is write a narrative for the interview that was recorded, then where would that information be contained? It would be contained within the reports and narratives that the officer memorialized their interviews in either the state police reports, the FBI reports, or perhaps in the Orion RMS system, or even other agencies, or beyond those, correct? Yes, other agencies, and that's true. There were other agencies that did memorialize reports that we have turned over. But the court gave us a deadline of November 1st of 2023 to provide discovery, and did you do everything you could to provide discovery to them that we had? Yes, ma'am. In fact, what has been your directive from Prosecutor McLeland with regard to discovery and whether there should be decisions made about what we share and what we don't share? To share everything that we have with them, even to a fault, which means every tip that came in through the FBI tip line, they've been provided. Absolutely. If we have a record of it, they have it. Is that correct? Yes. In the beginning, or when did you start your discovery transfers to the defense? I believe December the 7th, 2022. And that would have been shortly after their appointment, would it not be? Yes. And has it been ongoing since then, as reflected in your documents that you prepared that are in Exhibit 2? Yes. Now that there's some discovery that continues to be given to them, is that correct? Yes. Even though the deadline has passed? Yes. And some of that information is information you could not have had before November 1st of 2023. Would that be fair to say? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. That's okay. Some of the information you're giving them, you could not have given that to them before November 1st, 2023 because it didn't exist. Is that fair to say? Yes. For example, what would something like that be? Recently, we recovered some interviews the state police had located on one of their devices that had been recovered because of an inquiry about an interview that had taken place. And that was furnished to us a few weeks ago, and we turned it over to the defense as soon as we got it in our hands. And those interviews had actually been requested to be downloaded and attached to the state police records, was it not? Yes. And there was a report accompanying those. That evidence was turned over to the defense. And specifically, the officer who located that for you and did a supplement report. Yes, he did. Can you provide his name? Yes. Oh, his name was Matthew J. Harper. Thank you. And then aren't you also providing information that comes in from the DOC? Yes. And so that would be discovery that was not available before November 1st? Yes. And just to be clear, before the protective order for discovery existed, were there challenges to discovery and the transfer that were then alleviated by the discovery protection order? Monstrous problems. What? Okay, monstrous problems in the discovery? Or in the transfer of the discovery. And what were those problems? The redaction of the data to remove criminal records, information, social security numbers, phone numbers, anything that might identify persons' personal information, which we had talked with or interviewed or followed up on in that 6 or 7 year period. And so once that protective order for discovery was granted, you then felt comfortable duplicating discovery and providing it to the defense without redaction. Is that correct? Yes. Because we had the assurance that that information would not get out to the general public. I'd pass the witness, Mr. Baldwin. All right. So now cross-examination of Stephen Mullen. He's the dude that gives the discovery to both sides, the state and the defense. All right, so questions by Mr. Baldwin now. So let me get this straight. You knew in August of 2017 that Brad Holder's video was missing. It had been taped over, right? Well, let me strike that. You knew in August of 2017 that from February what was it, the 14th, up until February 20th of 2017, that those no longer existed, those videos, right? Yes, that's correct. So you found out in August, or at least you knew by August 17th, or 2017. But then, when you provided the defense with discovery in, let's say, I think it was the first time was in December, you didn't say, hey, by the way, I need to tell you this. There's some missing video of people that were interviewed in the very early stages of this case. You didn't tell me that, did you? You didn't tell Mr. Rosie that, did you? I didn't tell you, and I didn't tell Mr. Rosie that, but I believe I mentioned it to you or agent, his agent. It's from memory, my memory. I didn't write it down. I didn't document it. But it's not. Okay, well, did you tell Mr. McLeland there was missing information? Oh, yes, he knew. You did? Okay, so this is part of the packet that you just introduced into evidence. This is from August 22nd that you just introduced that into evidence. I don't know what number it is. Ms. Diner says, okay. Question. So in August 20th to 22nd, we got you're involved in these letters that go to Mr. McLeland or come from him. I want you to look at the very bottom that I've highlighted, and that's one of the exhibits that's been introduced. I don't remember which particular exhibit it was. Ms. Diner, number 2, exhibit 2, page 11, exhibit 2. Read the bottom of that just to yourself where I highlighted just for ease. I'm going to ask you a question about that. Yes? May I have that? Sure. So in August of 2023, here's what you said about Brad Holder's video that we requested. You had previously received ISP reports that document those interviews and what was said in those interviews, though we did not locate any videos of those interviews, right? So they said to Indiana State Police, you had previously received. Oh no. Let's read that again. So in August of 2023, here's what you said about Brad Holder's video that we requested. Quote, you had previously received ISP reports that document those interviews and what was said in those interviews, though we did not locate any videos of the interviews, right? Correct. Okay. That made more sense the second time around. Yeah, anyways, it was a weirdly phrased sentence. What you didn't say was, that's because they were taped over, did you? You didn't tell us that, did you? I didn't include that information. No. We did not learn about that this tape over business happened until February of 2024. Isn't that right? Yes. Then we asked for any reports that detail the lost recordings, and we just got that in evidence in the last couple of weeks, correct? Correct. I'm going to hand you what's going to be marked as Defendant's Exhibit E and ask you to identify that for me. Thank you. Tell me if you know about that. Yes. This is a document, a report that we requested about, hey, tell us about how did you memorialize the lost videotape interviews, right? And that's what you gave us, Exhibit C. Yes. Or it didn't. It's E. It's not dated though, is it? It's E. Thank you, sorry. Okay. So this document that we just got in the last couple weeks, it's not dated, is it? There's no date on it? There is no date on it. Did you just produce this? No. You wrote this out way back in 2017? 2017? Yes. And we've just gotten it in 2024. Yes. After we had to request it, right? Yes. And that wasn't the only thing we got. I'm going to hand you what's going to be marked as Exhibit F because we wanted all reports about anything missing. Sure. Review that document, and then this was provided to us in the last couple of weeks. Tell me when you're ready to talk about it. go ahead. This says, um, this says that Drive 2 containing the data of recordings made. This is in the third paragraph made by DVR includes interviews in one room, 2 or 3, and 4 were missing from April the 28th, 2017 to June 30th, 2017, right? That's what that says. There's missing video for almost 2 months, right? I'm not certain that was the final conclusion. I drafted this report after the incident had occurred, but in that DVD, excuse me, that hard drive, there were errors associated with that DVR and the compromise of the data on it. And it explained in the report how it occurred. You do, but the crux of it is from April 28th, 2017 to June 30th, 2017, there aren't any videos of any interviews, right? I'd have to go back and review now to make sure, but I believe there may be interviews, but they may not have sound. And this was the first time this document, Exhibit F, I think was given to this to my partner, co-counsel, and I was within the last couple weeks, and we had to ask for it. Yes. But we did get a narrative report of Brad Holder, right? Yes, about 6 paragraphs for Brad Holder. That's what his interview with police or law enforcement kind of came down to, just a number of paragraphs, right? Yes. How long was that interview? I don't know. What did he say in this interview? Do you know? I don't know. What happened to when you discovered in August of 2017 that his videotaped interview had been taped over? What did he say when you followed up in September of 2017 to follow up to make sure that at least that's memorialized? What was lost was memorialized closer to time in 2017. What did he say? I'm just not sure if I understand your question. Oh my gosh. Okay. Did you interview Brad Holder back in August of 2017 after you found out that this video was missing, just to give him a good accounting of what he said? Just another interview? I didn't. That'd be a good idea, don't you think? Ms. Diener, objection. It wasn't his place to decide. Sustained. So I want to go through those 2 time frames that we've got. February, right? February 14th through the 20th. That's not a single log is here, or there's not a single log, is there, of who went in and interviewed, right? And not like a log of like this person interviewed this person, nothing like that. So, not that I'm aware of. The early stages of an investigation, you did an investigation at some point. I talked to people and investigated leads. Would you agree with me, early on in an investigation, that can be some of the most important timeline to receive information? Yes. You didn't go back and re-interview any of those people from the first few days, did you? Not just Brad Holder, but anybody whose video interview was lost. I did not. And you know what I would like to know? If there are any other individuals who were interviewed during that time and their interviews were not lost and perhaps were recorded, because then that would prove that they specifically just did it, to hide from this case, to hide the evidence from this case. If there was more out there, All right. Question, and nor did you try to recreate a log of, hey, if I want to send a memo out to all the police officers who interviewed people, please tell me who you remembered videotaping because there's 6 days of lost video. Did you do anything like that? Or I didn't. Did law enforcement? No. No. Brad Holder was only interviewed in 2023 as a follow-up because of our depositions that were focusing on him. Would you agree? Possibly. There's no other reason you would have gone and interviewed Brad Holder then, right? I did not interview Brad Holder. He was interviewed. I've heard he was interviewed, and there's a report about it. I mean, If you could get the recordings back, you would want them back, wouldn't you agree? Absolutely. The second video time frame that we're talking about, April 28th through June 30th, there was an opportunity to unearth those lost videos from some type of Chinese equipment software. Software, right. Mm-hmm. Did you get that software? I turned it over to the state police for them to follow up. Do you know whether they followed up with the Chinese software to unearth these? I know that we were able to view the videos, but some do not have audio, so it may have been successful but limited success. Okay. So, did all the videos get recovered then with this Chinese software? I can't say whether all of them were recovered. We tried to see as many as possible. Did you follow up once the Chinese software came into place and something seems, according to you, to have been recovered? Did you do a report on that and say, well, here's what's been recovered, and here's, I think here's what that is, here's what we don't have recovered. You don't you do anything like that? Because I don't see any report about the Chinese software working. Is there such a report somewhere that said the Chinese software worked? I don't have it. Okay. You did have other reports. Undated, right? You should have put the date on there. Thank you. Yeah, can we agree on that? I'll do better. Yeah, there were lots of tips. I mean, you're an investigator for the prosecutor's office. Early on, there were lots of tips about Brad Holder, right? There was a few. More than a few. More than a few, wouldn't you agree? A few. And some, and so what I understood on direct examination is that when people and um, come in about a tip, then they were told, some of them at least, to go to Delphi Police Department and get interviewed on video. Is that right? Yes. So some of these people that were, if there were people, those few tips that were related to Brad Holder, they would have theoretically gone into the interview room as well. Is that correct? Likely, yes. And those would be lost? Yes. And because there's no log, you don't know who was interviewed or who was even interviewing, right? Correct. You should have a log. Would you agree? Hindsight's 2020. And the state was talking about, well, if they were trained to look for specific information like alibis and then follow up on the alibis, right? Yes. So that's kind of a no-brainer, alibis. But would you think with me that early on in this investigation, you don't know what's relevant or important related to the things that could be found in the future? True. So it's nice that you can do an alibi, but what happens if a single sentence, would you agree that a single sentence in an interview taken in context with evidence in the future might make a big difference in this case? Objection, speculation. I'm asking him as an investigator. Sustained. Whatever. Sustain your butt right there, Judge Gull. And you talked and referenced one of the state's exhibits regarding, I think I have it here, the Unclassified Federal Bureau of Investigation 413.17 follow-up on Brad Holder's alibi, right? Yes. And that's entered into evidence. Here, I'll hand you this. I don't know what exhibit that is. Thank you. I believe it's 5.5. It says, the Human Resources Director, Susan Case, said that the security camera at the scales may have picked up his vehicle. The video may have picked up the vehicle coming and going on that date, right? That's what it says. Yes. Excuse me, yes. Did you get the video of this from Human Resources Director? Is that a part of the discovery that we all have? No. Should have had that, right? I didn't have that. All that they had really was somebody, the Human Resources Director said that somebody clocked in with Brad Holder saying they were Brad Holder, right? That's all they said. Go ahead and read it. I suppose they would have to work his entire shift running his machine as well. I don't know, there's a typo there. All right, so did somebody go is it your understanding that somebody went and talked to Bradley Holder's co-workers that day to say, hey, was Bradley Holder working beside you? Objection, it's irrelevant. I'll move on. I'm almost done. He's like, I'm tired of hearing you sustain all of their objections. So, screw you, Judge Goal. Did you get to see if Brad Holder switched vehicles with his oldest son that day? Has that been, again, objection, I'll move on. This officer did not complete the follow-up investigation, Officer Diener says. Sustained. All right, so Baldwin continues his questioning. Would you agree with me that if an officer failed to prepare his report before the video was erased and he was going to use the video to help supplement, as he wrote, that there may not even be a memorialized copy? Could that be a possibility? It would be difficult to, if you're going to use that process, because the video was gone. However, I would say that it was a practice for a lot of officers to request the video to be retrieved from the DVR before the erasal occurred. Okay, so that was common. Officers would come in and say, hey, I want to do a report. Can I see the video? Yes. Because there's things on a video that can be important to an officer. Gosh, I just found out this one thing over here. Let me see. Sorry, I needed a sip of water. Let me see what was important over there on this video. That may be why they want to do that, right? It's possible, he says. Yeah. You said that Brad Holder has he ever been a key suspect to this day in this case? He was at work. He was at work. So, therefore, he has never been a key suspect. I don't know why I said taken there. I have no idea. My brain says the wrong words all the time. No matter what any other evidence that exists out there, he was at work. That's what the report says. Patrick Westfall, the same. His interview would be contained in the report that Agent Pohl did. Judge Diener said, Ms. Diener interjects and says, Judge, I would object to the question anyway. We're here on a motion to dismiss for destruction of exculpatory evidence for potentially useful. And that was blah, blah, blah. All right, so no more questions specific to Brad Holder. Sustained. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, Judge. No more questions. Any redirect? Ms. Diener says, yes. Investigator Mullen, you prepared 2 documents that have been marked by defense as Exhibit E and F, which are the letters regarding the 2 different issues with DVR recordings. They do not contain dates, but they do have information at the top referencing DELPHI case number and multiple others. Do you have those exhibits in front of you? I do. And so at the top, can you explain what's under investigative report for the court? It is titled Delphi Police Department Investigative Report, and it shows the Delphi Police Department case number that we did for an assist in this investigation, and the Carroll County Sheriff's Department case number for the double homicide, and the state police case and the FBI case number associated with the case reporting system. So when the discovery was made and you documented this information, did you share it with other law enforcement? I did. And can you tell from your memory or from these letters who you shared it with? I certainly advised First Sergeant Holman immediately, and Detective Liggett and he was just a detective at that point, and Detective Kevin Hammond of the unfortunate events with the DVRs. Okay, and they were part of Unified Command? Yes. And so they could then pass that along to anyone that did an interview that might need to be redone or follow up that might be necessary based on the fact that those interviews were no longer available. Is that true? That is true. And you indicated that you gave information to an agent of defense counsel that certain data was missing when discovery was turned over. Could you expand on that? How did you identify that, and to whom would you have been speaking? An agent of Mr. Rosie's office, and again, this is my memory, I didn't document it anywhere. Did you mark the hard drives? Most recent, yes, I did. The most recent, after they had been placed back on the case again, I marked them, even one as having no sound. So, no video. Or no video. Um, so when they got discovery back after being removed and put back on the case, and you were giving them discovery in January, and thereafter you marked the DVRs that had no video and no sound. Yes, I did. And when you say an agent of Mr. Rosie's office, are you talking about Sarah Luxembourg? Yes. And isn't it true that she picked up the evidence almost every single time? Yes. Okay, do you feel you had a rapport with her where you could share that with her and it would get passed along to counsel, to defense counsel? Yes. Okay, no other questions. Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin continues his questioning. There was lots of video that had blank on it, right? That you gave Sarah. Could you have been talking about that where you open it up and nothing's on there? I'm not sure how they appeared on the DVD or the hard drives, excuse me. I believe only the videos that were left on the hard drive would actually appear, so it wouldn't be able to pull up something that was just blank. I'm talking about empty files that were provided to us. There were things that that you told Sarah Luxembourg, hey, you're gonna open up some things, and there are empty files in there. Isn't that right? Let me read that question again. I'm talking about empty files that were provided to us. There were things that you told Sarah Luxembourg, hey, you're going to open up some things, and there are empty files in there. Isn't that right? Perhaps at the first, because we had, and each one of those showed in progress as we were putting more information into them. That might be in December of 22. But we didn't know about the April 28th through the June 30th, those two timeframes of missing video, until just in the last 2 weeks. You didn't tell Sarah Luxembourg about that, did you? I'm sorry, Mr. Baldwin, I didn't hear all of your question. You know what, it's late. I'm going to shut up. No more questions. Anything else, Ms. Diener? No. You may step down. Thank you. No other witnesses. You may step down. Yeah. Do you wish to admit E and F? They have not been offered or admitted. I do. I'm sorry, Judge. I do wish to admit E and F. Any objection? No. Thank you. Does the defendant have any additional evidence? We don't, Judge. Thank you. The court says, you wish to make any closing statements? I'll waive, Judge. Ms. Diener. Ms. Diener says, Judge, I believe that our response filed with the court on February 22nd properly summarizes the issues and the case law, so I will waive. The court says, all right, I will take the matter under advisement with all of the respective exhibits that have been admitted, and before you all leave, you have respectively the state filed a motion for leave of court to subpoena third-party records to the Department of Correction. I've received no objection or motions to quash from the defense. The defense filed a notice of discovery indicating that Mr. Allen's medical records, Part 1 and 2, had been provided to the state. So does that take care of your request for the medical records? Mr. McLeland says, Judge, no, because I think defense and I had a conversation. We're concerned that the records that were provided to the defense may not be complete set of records from the DOC. I found it necessary that we want the complete set of medical and mental health records to address those issues at trial, and so this is the reason we subpoenaed the DOC to make sure we get the complete record from them. The court says, okay, and the defendant filed a motion to compel and request for sanctions. That needs to be set for hearing. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge, I amended that because after I filed it, I found an email from a few days before where Mr. McLeland had responded, and therefore I would ask that the court to focus on the motion to amend, because in the motion to amend, I explained that, and then I focused on the things that weren't satisfactorily explained or provided. The court says, so you want me to just rule on the amended pleading? Correct. Not on the first motion to compel. The court says, and the state, you filed your response to the original pleading March 18th. So if you want to supplement, you need to do that quickly. Will do, Judge. And then you also filed your third Frank's notice and request for a Frank's hearing. I'll have to review that and issue an order. Like her 1 minute order saying no, denied without hearing. If is there anything else? Oh, before we go, then I will grant the state's motion for leave of court to subpoena third-party records to the Department of Correction, both of the ones that have been filed. Mr. Rosie says, Judge, I'm sorry, may I, Judge? Yes. I'd like to speak on that issue, if that's okay. Sure. Actually, I'm opposed to the court granting that at this point. We're still within the 15-day notice period, and what's going on here is that I made a new request on the Department of Corrections after we were reinstated in this case, and they had just provided that to me, and there's nothing untimely about any of this. But it just happened, I want to say, it was last week. Ms. Gallagher from the DOC had been working with me to try to get that information, so and when I received it, we were having difficulty essentially recovering that from their software program, which has been one of the challenges that we faced. You get discovery from one entity and it comes through Dropbox, and you get it from another entity and it comes through a Google account, and you get it from another entity and they've got their own software program. And so my staff member, up until I think this past Friday, was working with the DOC rep, Ms. Bedwell, to try and get that information converted into a format that we could read. And I do believe Mr. McLeland's correct that I do think that there was information available to me that the DOC had about Mr. Allen, medical and psychiatric, when I made the first request that I didn't get, because now that I have kind of a refreshed request, I'm seeing additional stuff. So this is a long way of saying I would like a chance to review what I just received before I just agree to disclose it, because I don't know what it is, and it's quite voluminous, and you might imagine with medical records. I know one of the files I think that I shared with Ms. McLeland was like 900 pages, so I mean, in fairness, there were some blank pages mixed in there, but my request is the court allow me the 15 days or whatever time period is left to file my motion to quash. I really do believe that's probably not going to happen because I'm trying to be transparent with Mr. McLeland. I already showed him the first 2 dumps I got, so I'd like some time to look at that before the court. 15 days is up March 29th, so it needs to be filled on or before that date. Rosie says, very good, thank you. The court says, okay, anything else from the state on anything that we've covered yet today? No, Your Honor, I think that covers it. Anything else from the defense? No, ma'am. Thank you very much. We've completed. Jody, you can go off the record. Thank you very much. This concludes the proceedings at hearing on motion to dismiss conducted on March 18th in this cause. So that was it. So we did not get anything on their contemptuous conduct, the misconduct. Well, not misconduct, but contemptuous conduct. We didn't get anything of that, but at least we got everything regarding the Richard Allen case, the DELPHI case, the important stuff, the stuff that matters. We got all of that, and that was pretty apparent. It's pretty apparent that now we have 2 sets of lawyers. So Rosie and Baldwin and Liberato and Scremin, who both say that they believe that there's something to this Odinist angle. They believe that there is something in regards to the Odinists, and that the lives of Abby and Libby may have been taken by Odinists, and it was done in a ritualistic manner. So that's two sets of lawyers, reputable lawyers. One set of lawyers is actually, in tight with Judge Gull. So he came back and he said um, that he believed this Odinist angle and that Richard Allen was being mistreated in the prison system. So there's that. And now there were three really good police officers, Ferenczi, Murphy, and Click, who were also in this mentality, in agreement that there were Odinist ties. And then it's this Brad Holder, um, Elvis Fields, and Patrick Westfall mainly. And it's the Franks memo is being corroborated now by officers of the law in sworn sworn and open court. So we know that now. We know that things in the Franks memo have to be taken seriously at this point. Anybody who doesn't at this point believe that there could be a chance, just a chance, that the Franks memo is possible, there's no hope. There's no hope for the people that don't have that slim chance of thinking that it's possible. Because this is just egregious misconduct by the government, if I've ever seen it. And that goes from the law enforcement all the way up to Judge Gull, because I have not approved or agreed of a lot of her rulings, especially her 1-minute orders that she just sends out. I'm sure after this, she's just going to deny everything without a hearing anyways, and that's how she'll deal with Baldwin and Rosie. She does not like them for some reason. She just does not like them, and I think I have been wondering for a very long time if Judge Gull is being threatened. Because remember that, like, when it first came out, then when she first started being weird with them and denying all their motions, that then she got really ill and she was out sick for like a couple days or something when something was happening. I can't remember the exact specifics, but she was very sick. So I think she was threatened. I honestly think that she's being threatened by Odinists, or she's in on it. She's in the Odinist clique somehow. But I think she's being threatened more than anything else, and that's why she's maybe ruling the way she is. But I don't know. It's her whole career that could be thrown away if she continues to be showing her bias so much. And I don't know what the next step is, but I hope that Rosie and Baldwin have another step to do something to mitigate the issues that they're having with Gull, because the Supreme Court didn't throw her off, which I disagreed with that from the start, and I still disagree with it because she has not done a whole lot better. Like, she gave the defense maybe 2 things out of there. Everything else was sustained sustained for the state, or ruled in favor of the state. So it's very clear, and a lot of judges do that. It's not just Gull. A lot of judges, their backgrounds is in being a prosecutorial lawyer, so in those cases they're blindsided and they see the law one way, whereas a defense attorney sees it from a different perspective. It's just 2 different perspectives of law, but you have to look at it that way. And if you're a judge, you have to separate the 2 back and say, this is, what's fair for the case. So I don't know. She's just something else. She has not instilled much more confidence in me since we've come back from the Supreme Court. I'll just say that. It's scary. It's scary for Richard Allen. It's scary for all of us, because any one of us could be Richard Allen. Any one of us could be wrongfully convicted or railroaded by police or whatever it might be. Any one of us could be, for any reason other than it couldn't be someone else. It it couldn't be Officer Joe. It had to be me instead. Like Officer Joe puts me away and makes the evidence fit so that it's me instead of him or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't have to be Officer Joe either. It could be just, crooked, not crooked, but like misinterpreting evidence. But obviously there's something to this Odinist thing. So we have corroborating evidence. We have testimony now from an officer of the law that this Odinist stuff was happening. These Odinist angles were being looked at. And I think I might do like a short, I have so many other episodes that I'm trying to work on, but I might maybe do something on Ferenczi. I know I've talked about him before, but I think it would be interesting to do more of a deep dive looking at his life and how he got to where he was, because he was basically assassinated on the job by someone with a gun. So it's unfortunate. And I don't know if it's maybe Odinist related. We don't know. Me talking about Odinists is even scary. Like it's a scary thing. But you know what? It's good to talk about these things and to shine a light on them, because that's the only way they're going to end. It's the only way we can get truth and end these kinds of things, these kinds of incredible violent acts. Anyways, on that note, I will let you go. This was a long one. Sorry for having to hear my voice for so long, but that is... it looks like we didn't hear the contemptuous conduct. That must have been in the morning, and that Officer Mullins was in there in the morning, but we didn't get part of that transcript for whatever reason. But this was the important stuff. This was the real important piece of it, because it is ultimately what comes back to Richard Allen. So the important part of the case: justice for the girls, justice for Richard. The important things, not let's try to throw stones at the defense attorneys just because they're easy targets and we can throw stones at defense attorneys because everybody hates defense attorneys. That seems to be the consensus. Most people don't understand that defense attorneys defend your rights. Defense attorneys are there for you, for the people. So on that note, I am really going. Thank you again so much for watching. Please like this video on the way out, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye now. If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.